Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ron, and today we're going to be playing some Killing Floor 2. Today we are going to be specifically looking at the new weapon that was just added in the latest update. Currently this is still the beta, so things are likely going to change, but this is the HRG Beluga Beat for the Sharpshooter. This is a tier 3 weapon that costs 1100 dosh, and as you can see we're already partway into this round. You should be able to get this around wave 3 on an average 7 map. This is on Suicidal. You might be able to get it sooner on Hell on Earth, or of course in multiplayer if people are willing to give you money, or whatever it might be. It's a very interesting weapon to give to Sharpshooter. So it's based off of the Seal Spiel, that's for demo, and it weighs the same and it costs the same, but it doesn't work the same. It holds 12 rounds rather than just the 5 that the Seal Spiel has, and it shoots out microwaves. These microwaves travel in a straight line. They are rather large. They do, as I said, microwave damage. They also have a high chance of knocking things back if they don't kill them. So even hitting something like the ground can potentially still knock Zeds back. It has a very high knockback chance, working on really everything as of right now, even up to bosses, which is pretty crazy as a crowd control weapon. It does bonus damage to anything in armor, as you'd expect from a microwave weapon, and it has pretty decent sights. Unfortunately, this weapon is not one of the best weapons to be using with the rack 'em up skill that Sharpshooter has. So taking the faster reload makes a bit more sense, at least to me. That being said, rack 'em up you can still take depending on what your other weapon is. Because this weapon does weigh 7, you do have some other weapons that you could pick that are good options. So far I've found myself taking like the M14 or the centerfire most of the time with this weapon. I found those to be extremely good. Weapons like the crossbow aren't as useful with this weapon in my opinion, but you can still use them. So its primary fire, as you've just seen, just shoots straight down, pushing away pretty much everything. It has a very high chance of just body-shotting small Zeds. You don't need to hit headshots. And honestly, as I stated, it's really hard to exactly tell where a headshot is. This has a very strange hitbox, and it's a very slow-moving projectile. It does have a secondary fire. By pressing its secondary fire, you're actually locked into its secondary fire. You cannot switch back and forth between primary fire and secondary fire with this weapon. The secondary fire fires out a blue beam then that travels much faster than the red ones. This does extra damage as well. It's far easier to hit things like headshots with this secondary fire, but it is much less forgiving compared to the red one in terms of where you can hit an enemy. Firing in the secondary fire does not take any additional ammunition, so this is generally better for hitting Zeds at long range. Once again, even with this faster rate of fire, it's still not the easiest to hit headshots with, but it is much easier than the red beam is. So with its base red beam, it does 110 damage on direct hit. This is all counted as microwave damage. It can also apply more damage towards armored enemies because it's just naturally stronger against them. With its secondary fire, being the blue beam, this does 280 damage on direct hit. This weapon obviously has a fairly slow rate of fire. You can't shoot it incredibly fast. So like all tier 3 weapons, you can upgrade this weapon twice. With each upgrade, it increases in damage by 15%. So its primary fire then goes to 126 and then 143. And then its secondary damage goes from 280 to 322 and 364. Being a pretty high damaging weapon with its secondary fire, and respectable damage with its primary fire. I have tried using this weapon quite a few times with upgrades, and it feels okay. I usually don't use upgrades with this though. I think the best way of using this weapon is using it as a secondary weapon, unlike what I'm doing here because it is my only weapon, but using this as not your primary damage dealing weapon. Using this as a stalling mechanism. It's actually really good for that. It can buy you a lot of time and make a lot of space very easily. It's also pretty forgiving with its, well, just with its damage. It's not the best against big things, but one thing that it can do really well is it can stall enemies like Scrakes, Flesh Pounds, really anything. It can also stall bosses, and I'll show that later in this video once we get to boss wave. Its secondary fire is definitely better at dealing damage to enemies like this, but its primary attack is great for just pushing Zeds backward. It's also really good if you're not the best sharpshooter in the world in terms of aim. I think this weapon will do fantastic for beginners because you really don't need to be the best at aim. You can just spam fire it constantly at enemies, just with its primary fire. Since it does have such a high knockback chance, you can easily hold Flesh Pounds in place for the rest of your team to fight. Same goes with like Scrakes or any of the bosses, really. It's rather strange how strong this is. So when fully upgraded, you still have some choices with the Beluga Beat. As it weighs 9, you could go with something like the crossbow just to double up on damage. You could go with something like the center fire to have an all-around well-rounded loadout. Same with the Winchester. You could also go with one of the pistols or multiple of the pistols. It's really your call. Upgrading the Beluga Beat does make it reasonably stronger. It increases its damage by quite a bit. If you are only going to use the Beluga Beat, like what I'm doing here, it's best to try to mix up your shots between firing the red... I'm not really sure what to call them. I keep calling them lasers, but they're not really lasers. They're like sound waves or something. So shoot the red wave at small things and things that are close to you, but then when you have time, switch to the blue laser to hit things either far away from you or to hit stronger enemies. As stated, this weapon doesn't really need upgrades. It's pretty strong without upgrades. And you could go with a faster shooting weapon like the FAL or the M14. That's what I've had pretty good success with. Both those weapons work just fine. If you take the FAL, you can't go with upgrades. If you take the M14, you can upgrade one of these weapons once.
Nice.
It's your call as to which one you want. The strange thing about those weapons, though, is that they benefit so well from rack 'em up that it feels really strange to be using this with the reload, since this weapon doesn't benefit all that much from rack 'em up. Well, it does benefit very well from rack 'em up. It's just it's really difficult to use rack 'em up with it. You don't have to be worrying about a bunch of small Zeds swarming you as much as you usually would with Sharpshooter. So things like stalkers and crawlers are much less of an issue.
Love my guns.
You can more easily kill them, and you're not at a huge disadvantage if something like Flesh Pounds start coming at you, because you can still knock them back with the secondary fire and then use the primary fire if need be to push them back further. You can also use this time and space to get yourself like some more healing, wait for your healing syringe to come back up. I've found this weapon to be incredibly versatile. Even though it doesn't honestly fit with Sharpshooter all that much. It doesn't fit like how most of their weapons do. But just doing something like that makes it pretty easy for you to deal with anything that's large. And if not, you can always kind of rely on your team with this, because you can stun lock enemies very easy with this weapon, which is also kind of nice. I don't know if they're going to keep the stun lock feature in this. I kind of hope that they do, otherwise I don't think this weapon's going to be as good. Alright, we got Hans. Okay, well, we should be able to push Hans back, make it so he can't run up and stab us very easy, which should help us quite a bit in this. So, when Hans is just moving around regularly, it's probably best just to use your secondary fire, because he's going to want to stay at a range. This is kind of strange because every time you shoot, you do have to select the secondary fire before you can fire. At least if you're using it like this. So let's see if this can actually push Hans back. I'm pretty sure it can. I've honestly only fought Hans, I think, once using this weapon, so...
These things getting bigger?
Yeah, as you can see, you can easily stun lock him in place. This will be very, very useful for your team, because if he's really focusing somebody down and you can get in front of him, or if you can just get directly behind him and just keep hitting him with this, it'll likely just stun lock him in place where he can't get to your teammate that quickly. Especially if your teammate's somebody with bonus mobility like Gunslinger or even another Sharpshooter. Oh. Although he can push through eventually. There is a little gap in there, so you can't 100% stun lock him all the time.
I'll burn your lungs to ashes.
Alright. So as long as you don't get stuck on a truck like I just did, you should be okay.
Got some ammo here.
Face me.
This is also a pretty good weapon to be ADSing with because it's
Enough of this face. Now you
fairly
can
easy
face
to
new
just aim down
attacks.
sights with. It has nice open sights,
Stomped
I
bigger
found.
into bits.
And overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this weapon. It's pretty good. Oh, there we go. Once again, we got stuck on something, but it was okay. We were able just to bully Hans into submission. That's really what this weapon feels like you're doing. You're really just bullying, like, whatever you don't kill with it. And it does have decent ammo pickup of 12 rounds every time, so
Just tell yourself
that's kind of
you've
cool.
got a fighting chance. Ugh. Defeat is inevitable.
You monster.
Just push Hans back until we eventually win and beat him. It actually is much better in team fights, as I found out earlier today when I was streaming this. Our team really didn't have any trouble fighting any of the bosses because somebody would deal a ton of damage to the boss, it would try to target them, and then I'd just stun lock them until it came after me. And I could just back off, stun lock them more, and then they're likely to switch to another target trying to go for them. The Beluga Beat overall, I think, is actually a really strong weapon. I think it's another strong weapon that's going in Sharpshooter's arsenal. Currently, I would say, at least on like my tier list scaling, I'd put it in either S tier for just its sheer utility as a backup weapon, or like A tier if you were going to use it as your primary weapon. It's still pretty good for that. Not as strong as certain other primary weapons for Sharpshooter, but I don't think Sharpshooter really has many bad weapons right now. Alright, so that was taking a look at the Beluga Beat. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next time we're going to be looking at the Gravity Imploder, which is the new DLC weapon for demo, and that weapon is a ton of fun. So check that out when that goes live. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video. If you're new here, be sure that you're subscribed. That way you'll get notifications whenever I put out new videos. And thank you guys so very much for watching this. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye!